When we are with family, people we're very comfortable with, people we've spent a lot of time with over the years, we tend to put our guard down and we become unmindful. And this is why the old expression goes, treat your friends like friends and your family like friends. Because we treat our friends better than we treat our family. We often take out our anger and frustration on our family. We often bring work stress home and take it out on our family. And this is because we are relaxing into that unmindfulness space where we stop choosing our words carefully and wisely, where we stop paying attention to how we're responding, and we are just unconsciously reacting. And so it's much more difficult to maintain a peaceful composure when it is our family. We feel comfortable creating chaos when we are with our family. And we see this all the time. You know, it's usually families that are yelling at each other, not strangers or workmates. One thing we have to do is practice mindful awareness and alertness in times that we normally lose it. We need to use chaotic situations to practice awareness when things get chaotic, and we need to practice in light, enjoyable moments as well, because what we are ultimately going for is an entire life of peace, presence, and stillness. And so we can act with great energy externally and a great stillness and calm internally. And in this way, we achieve more because we are not giving away all of our mental energy. We're keeping it within, and we are maintaining our really deep energy levels by not constantly engaged in mental activity. And in doing so, we raise our level of present moment awareness throughout our day and our lives. And it becomes habit whether we're with family or strangers. And so what that looks like is just recognizing space. The space between words, the space between thoughts, and the space between two people. And when we simply notice this stillness and peace in the empty space of a room, in between the words and thoughts in our head or are spoken, and we recognize that spaciousness, that true stillness that is underneath your consciousness and the other person's consciousness. Suddenly, and that space that I'm referring to is the space where all feelings are felt from, all thoughts are heard from, all of the sensations and experiences we have are felt on. Just like space, physical space, is the place that allows for all the physical phenomenon to emerge. We have an inner spaciousness from which all of our senses are projected onto and emerge. And it is that space that creates all of the stuff. And when we notice that space, the stuff instantly becomes half as important or even less so, because that peace is so enriching. And once we have one foot in that space, one foot in the physical world, and we are balanced and centered, it becomes very easy to maintain our inner peace and to keep our emotions in control and to consciously respond from that place of stillness and peace. Family stress is one of the most common sources of stress, and it's really become much more common in the last couple years and decades even. And this is because we're living more isolated lives, and our ability to cohabitate is getting lost. And we are living in more ego-driven times than ever before. And this is partially because we are so ingrained in our ego nature in so many different ways. And what I mean by this is that we are identifying with our ego in so many more ways. We are identifying with our thoughts, our beliefs, and our not just religious beliefs, and identifying as this person who has this religion, but also these political views, which are becoming more central to daily American life. But we also have these digital egos. We have these digital personas, and we are further identifying with more things that take us further away from our true nature, from our essence, that soul or consciousness within us, which is what truly makes us who we are. Everything else is just decoration, the touches around the corners. They are, our upbringing, our last name, nationality, economic class, our physical body, our brain structure, and our upbringing and experiences. These are not who make us who we really are. These are the conditions that who we really are was brought into. And these are like the karma, the cause and effect that we find ourselves in. So we have our own karma, or cause of effect of how we came into be. And we come into this world which is playing out the cause and effect of the actions and lives of everyone around us. So it's one person's focal point in a sea of focal points. And what this, of course, leads to, in families especially, is multiple views, each equally valid, and sometimes very confrontational and very separate from how we may choose to leave. We cannot just quit our family and go apply to join a new family. So we're sort of stuck with this family. And if we are not careful, we could really end up in a situation where the stress gets too much, the conflict gets too great, and a separation occurs. And sometimes that is the best situation. And sometimes a conscious choice to set boundaries and create distance is essential, especially when there's abuse and trauma and a triggering of PTSD, which is a very real thing that happens in families, that post-traumatic stress response. It doesn't have to be in a war zone. It happens in any situation where there's stress. And after that stress is where the PTSD comes into play. And so sometimes situations with certain people can become too challenging. And in those situations, a conscious decision to separate may be the only option for maintaining mental and physical safety and peace. So when we deal with these family situations, we must recognize that this stress is not happening to us. It is happening to these egos. These egos are the only thing that's being actually hurt. There's feelings don't get hurt. We feel feelings. And sometimes the feelings may be difficult and painful, but they are unable, no one is stabbing at our feelings. What gets hurt is purely that identification with ego that feels as if it is damaged and bruised. And sometimes it can feel more painful than true physical bruises. But when we start to take a step back and recognize that there are, in a family, for example, when two family members are coming together, there are two consciousnesses coming together, and there are these egos between them. And these egos can play out numerous mental stories. These stories we tell ourselves about past situations, stories we tell ourselves about current situations. And these egos are fragile and sensitive, defensive, and committed to protecting that consciousness. But in doing so, creates conflict, creates adversaries. And we have to recognize those two egos when we're dealing with family, because this is where the conflict is happening. And just behind those two egos are two loving souls that just want a hug. And there's these very strong egos getting in the way. And if we can understand that in every situation there is truth in both points of view, we can become more willing to apologize, more willing to forgive, and hopefully we can avoid those royal family splits that have been happening recently. So that is the best way that we can really start to move beyond those feelings of pain and stress, moving beyond those triggers that the family members know how to pull and those buttons to push that can reactivate so much childhood age regression, where we lash out in the same maturity and levels that we did as children, or it brings up so many painful emotions. And we can finally really just sit with our family members, and we can experience that consciousness of love beyond the decades of conflict. And we can just sit and be with these people who we love, with the good and the bad and all of it, and simply allowing it to be, appreciating, and with a higher level of awareness than simply these false identities creating drama. when we are dealing with family and they're really driving us crazy, what's really happening is we are lost in a thought storm. We are thinking all of these things. How could this person do this? How dare they? Do they not know what I've gone through? Who do they think they are? And we are creating this mental story from a place of anger, hatred, and resentment. And if we can simply create some distance between those thoughts and the awareness of the thoughts, we can see that these stories we are living in are fiction, and that there is zero reason to internalize any stress based on any family drama. The hard part is seeing it in the moment, but it is possible. And the way we create that separation is, instead of living in that thought storm, we simply notice the thought storm, and we notice it like a private investigator or a detective. When we are having these thoughts, they become our incontrovertible, official truth. There is no room for doubt, and that is why we get so angry and frustrated, because we are certain that this person wronged us. And I don't mean to say that maybe they didn't, but when we have these thoughts, we can acknowledge that there is another side. There is another truth, even though we completely disagree with it. Someone else may be having a complete opposite view of that situation, and usually are. And when we can become conscious of not just our own thoughts, but of objectively how they are only our thoughts, and to actually analyze them like our own therapist, and to really explore and notice how we don't know this for certain. There is another side. And is it possible that what I am thinking about this other person, is it possible that that could be said about myself? And once we just start to explore the possibility that we don't have all the information, that we don't have all the answers, that we don't have the full picture, that we have a limited perception, which is all true. We are all just a single point of consciousness, and we have very limited information. And when we can bring this awareness of our own limitations to this thought storm, we keep stepping back further and further until we are outside of the storm and we are just watching it from a safe distance. And there is no inner turmoil or inner chaos. There is only higher conscious awareness that is observing this as a third party with no skin in the game, and just enjoying that playful drama that is our lives. So the next time that there is this inner chaos going on, just turn all of the thoughts around and think, how do I know that's true? Can it be said about me? And is there anything that I actually know for sure? those three questions are very powerful to help us step outside of that inner anger and thought storm. And then after that, we start to look at how we're feeling, and we examine wherever we're upset. We examine our thoughts, and we look to see if we're thinking words like should. If we are thinking, this person shouldn't have been this way. This person should have been this other way. And then we have to let that go, because there is no should. There is only what is. And should is that word that causes more suffering than any other word, because it is the word that resists reality. It is the basis for all insanity, because we are now saying what isn't good enough, which is only creating a recipe for misery. And we are saying that what is should be different. And that is delusional, because what is all there is. And we either accept what is in each moment and be happy, content, and can act in this world with our highest clarity and greatest intentions and with our greatest effectiveness on our situations, or we resist and we become angry and panicked and, in extreme cases, completely delusional and create an entirely fictional world that is more attractive than the one we find ourselves in. And to embrace reality will always be the wisest choice that will put us closer to the path of truth and love. So turn it around and notice those shoulds, and we can create that space between our thoughts and our true selves. I know that as the holidays are coming up, what should be a festive and joyous time for all of us, for too many, is a time that evokes a great deal of grief and loss and memories of past trauma. Many of us are celebrating alone, estranged from family, and we are, all of us, to some extent, disconnected from that tribe, that tight-knit community that we evolved to live within. And we're disconnected from nature and these things that fill up our spirit and enrich our lives in dramatic ways that really all of us are suffering from on some level. We are social creatures, and in these modern times where sometimes we live far away from our families, sometimes families have been the source of trauma, or we've lost dear loved ones. Seeing all of that holiday spirit around us, idealized in films and television and songs, can really put a magnifying glass on our own suffering and exacerbate it, make us feel like we're really missing out. And this time that is already troubling is even made worse when we feel it's a time where we should be happy. And if you have lost someone and the holidays without that person feel like a gaping black hole, if you're estranged from your loved ones, disappointed, and maybe even out of a need to protect yourself from cruelty and abuse, I hope we can all remember that you're not alone. None of us are alone. We may be suffering alone, but there are countless people out there who are going through the same struggles. And I hope we can remember that this story in our mind that may be focusing on loss or a traumatic past during these holiday seasons, that they are still stories. They are thoughts and feelings in our mind and body. And we are the witness to that story. I hope we can all witness those thoughts and feelings, the good and the bad, with some sense of peace in knowing that we can watch without getting trapped inside. That we can watch with a bit of distance between that story from our past that is so hurtful and that which sees and experiences those thoughts. And when we can witness that heavy emotion and thought, and we can witness how it wishes for things to be different than they are, that we can even accept a bit of that reality which is, and we can understand that no one is promised a tomorrow. No one is promised a loving, supportive family, even though we all deserve it. And that we can eventually learn to witness those good times that we have had in our lives, and we can witness those bad times. And we can recognize that no matter what has happened, we are still here. We have this breath. And whether we lost a loved one and we know how much they would want us to become happy and live every moment to the fullest, or whether we're dealing with abusive family and we have to realize that for our own sake, we have to make the most of this life, that we can find peace in that witnessing, that we feel as though while this movie of life we're watching may be in that sad scene, we can find a way to believe and know that there will be a happy ending. The happy ending is what we make it. We are the witness of this movie but we are also the creators of our story. Pain will be there, but whether we suffer from that pain is whether we choose to resist it or allow it to be. Because when we allow something to be without any hatred or anger or pessimism, then we can peacefully experience even very heavy grief and loss. Many times for children who grow up in very toxic homes, it is normal to respond by escaping. Oftentimes this looks like ADD and ADHD, because being present, focusing on the here and now, is too difficult and stressful for a child who is still developing. And the trauma responses we develop as children can live with us our whole lives if we don't do the healing process that is necessary. When we are grown-ups and adults, sometimes we still find ourselves in very difficult situations, whether it's difficult people at work or maybe a child or spouse or sibling or some person we live in close connection with that we find it difficult to escape their orbit. And so we may wonder as adults, should we just escape to a fantasy world? Should we tell ourselves pretty stories instead of confronting a difficult reality? While it does seem like in many instances that may be easier and it may be beneficial to our mental health in the moment, in the long run, we are developing a dislike, distrust, and distaste for reality. And the more we are in conflict with reality, the more we are in conflict with ourselves, and the more we are in conflict with things as they are compared to as we wish they would be. And so it is very important that we try to, instead of escape, to love deeper whatever is happening in the moment, because the one thing that truly transforms a difficult situation and that truly heals our mind and body is love. Love is that transformative emotion. And I don't mean we love our abusers. I don't mean we invite murderers over for coffee. I simply mean we turn our mentality from my life is terrible, I hate this person, I need to get out of here, and we shift into a mindset of how can I show more love to myself and others. And that little switch takes it from a negative, subconscious, escapist tendency, and it turns it into a wise sage for ourselves. And we become the voice of reason that we wish we had from others, because we can be that for ourselves. And sometimes we have to be. And, meditation, spirituality, the reason we sit with our back straight is because we don't let life push us over. And whatever comes our way, with a straight back, with a head held high, we witness. We don't cave, we don't cower, we simply allow whatever happens to happen, because we don't want to fight reality. Because when we understand that resisting what is causes our suffering, and when we understand that hatred causes suffering, the only logical conclusion is to commit ourselves to love and compassion, because that not only makes us feel better in the moment, because when we are feeling love and pure loving energy, we feel amazing, but even in the future, because we are building ourselves up. We are not trying to escape a situation, we are strengthening ourselves to handle and take on any challenge life throws our way. So that's the difference, and that's the benefit. So, as difficult as it can be, try to stay present in your body. Don't lose yourself to emotion. Don't scream your head off and, let it all out. Try and just witness. Objectively, we can all see, and it's very clear to see, that we would hope in any situation that anyone can say anything to us and we cannot be triggered, we cannot be affected, and we can maintain our inner peace. The beauty is that is possible. We can all reach that place. It just takes practice, staying present, staying mindful of our thoughts and emotions, and not losing ourselves into them. And so instead of escaping, embrace these moments that allow us to practice a new, conscious, thoughtful response to difficult situations.